late 70s, my father and I moved to Fort McMurray from Northern Ontario. We had a small mobile paving business. Found an opportunity, Northward Developments was building their housing facilities in Fort McMurray then, and there was no paving contractor in Fort McMurray, so we got wind of that, and they had a small paving contract they put out. We came out and thought, well, this would be a good summer job. So my father and I, we had a very small operation then, about eight employees. So my father and I thought, let's go out and try Fort McMurray for one contract. And like so many people that came to Fort McMurray for one contract, you stayed for 2 and 3, and it turned into a lifetime. So that was the genesis of Wilson Industries in Fort McMurray. As I said, started out with 8 employees. And when I sold the business 10 years ago, we had about 150 employees. Fort McMurray was very good to us, and we just kind of grew with the community, if you will, like so many guys did, Doug Goloskis and Leo Roberts and guys like that. We started out with a very small operation and grew with the community. Fort McMurray afforded me so many opportunities, and at the end of the day, I got married in Fort McMurray, and my kids were all born in Fort McMurray. I'm still involved in Fort McMurray and more in the real estate business. We got some commercial real estate properties. Always been very engaged in the community. I like to give back to Fort McMurray because it gave me so much. That was how we got started. Spent 35 years there and still have a home there and still do business there. It's very much a part of my life. I mean, let's face it, the oil sands is why Fort McMurray got started in the first place and continues to thrive. I think oil and gas is what makes Alberta thrive. It's under a lot of pressure right now with so many enviros are pressuring oil and gas facilities, and there's a move to renewables and all of that. And that's all good. I find that oil and gas really gets demonized, and that's something we're going to have to fight back against, and so many organizations are doing that and doing a good job of it. I think people are realizing that the oil sands can be very sustainable, probably has the highest environmental standards of any oil and gas operation in the world, really. We really have to promote the good things that we do environmentally in the oil sands. I see it continuing to thrive, even though there's a move to renewables and what have you. Oil and gas is always going to be there. It'll certainly always be a big part of Fort McMurray and continue to thrive with Fort McMurray. And we don't have the leadership in Ottawa. And I'll be very candid. The Chancellor of Germany coming to Canada and saying, listen, how can you help us with your LNG? And our Prime Minister's response was, there's no business case for LNG. I look at that, and that's insanity for him to even say that. I'm in the crane business now, and we have cranes working in the Montney field, and we do completions in the gas fields of northern Alberta and BC. And LNG, to me, has got a huge future in this country, and it's continuing to grow. And the pipeline out to Kitimat, that's all going to be about LNG. And yet our Prime Minister says there's no business case for LNG. Well, I think what our current Premier, Danielle Smith, is doing is something that will address that problem. She's talking about the sovereignty bill, and that's pretty contentious, fair to say. But if you listen to what she's talking about very carefully, she's just saying, we have to get the federal government to stay in their own lane and allow us to develop our natural resources, and don't be a blockade, and don't prevent us from putting in pipelines and new energy plants and things like that. I think what she's doing is a step in the right direction of trying to get federal government to back off and allow us to develop our own resources. So that's certainly one step. There are some new leaders on the horizon that I think are going to try and help overcome that. I believe that somebody like Poilievre recognizes what we have to do in Western Canada, and I think he's a guy that will change that direction a little bit. I'm a big skier, and I'm a golfer. We're all about a healthy lifestyle, I guess is what I say. And my kids are all active in those sports as well. So we stay active doing everything. Good health and longevity is kind of what we strive for. 5 things to do in Fort McMurray that are fun. Well, certainly I have to say I was a big part of the Vista Ridge development myself and some other community leaders. In fact, I was the chairman of the Vista Ridge board for 25 years and have a strong passion for Vista Ridge in Fort McMurray because I see what Vista Ridge has done for the community. If you go out there on Saturday afternoon and you see 500 kids on snowboards and skis having fun, to me that's something I'm pretty proud of. And now it's got a golf course, by the way. It's a facility that young families in Fort McMurray can certainly take advantage of. Another thing we used to do a lot of was fly-in fishing. We used to fly up to the Six Lakes area and go fishing pretty often. Fantastic country up there, by the way. If you go up to the sand dunes and the countryside up there is beautiful. But certainly Fort McMurray adds so much with Mac Island. If you're a young family and you go down to Mac Island, They have everything that you might want as a young family with hockey and golf and all of the fitness facilities and outdoor facilities and what have you. Mac Island plays a big part in community life in Fort McMurray. I was also very involved in the Keano College. I chaired the board there for quite a while, and Keano has a lot to offer too with the theater and certainly athletics, and Keano's always provided some pretty prominent athletes in volleyball and basketball and what have you, so there's a lot of opportunity at Keano College as well. And certainly Fort McMurray and guys like Phil Marr were very prominent in grooming all of our cross-country ski facilities. So Fort McMurray really has a network of cross-country ski facilities that I think everybody in Canada would be proud to use, and lots of teams come and train there, by the way. Lots of opportunities there. Pretty active young community and a pretty fun place to go and grow a young family. I have to tell you, I took my son down to Huntington Beach. Beautiful beach. It's 10 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. We're walking up the beach one day, and I looked out on the horizon and I saw oil rigs in the ocean. And yet, Jane Fonda comes to Fort McMurray and protests the oil sands. And that's such a parody in my mind. The oil sands in Fort McMurray are the most sustainable, safe, and reliable and environmentally friendly industry in the world. And there's been other people like Neil Young, and they come to Fort McMurray because, I think the oil sands is fairly new compared to some of the oil and gas facilities in California that have been there for hundreds of years. There's always going to be that resistance. You're always going to have people resisting any kind of oil and gas development. And we just have to keep doing what we do and do it well and show what a good industry it is and how safe it is and how environmentally friendly it is. If people would take the time to come to Fort McMurray and do a tour of the oil sands by helicopter and show them just how green it is and how well managed it is and how clean it is, Ball Spring would be glad to do that for them. They would probably get a better appreciation other than reading an article in the Globe and Mail and deriving their opinion from there. But there's always going to be that resistance. The people in our industry are doing a good job of overcoming that, painting a good picture, painting the positive picture of the good things we do with the environment, and it's going to pay off.